A journey into the underground with Adam X. Sonic Room Podcast. Hi, I'm Adam X, and on today's show, I've met up with my old Chicago homie, the techno maestro known as Hyperactive. Running the parallel in the American rave scene back in the 90s, Hyper and I reminisce about his youthful days growing up in Chicago and his rise in the global techno scene. It's a great conversation between two old friends. Tune in, turn on, enjoy. How you doing, Joe?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're up here.
Excited to sit with you and talk about, the past, future,
past, future, present. Yeah, it's been a long time, man. It's, woof. I know this man since, 1993, 1994?
Got to be in there, right around there.
Yeah, somewhere around there. Lots of memories playing with this guy from Chicago to Milwaukee to New York City. We never really played in Europe together, though. I don't think so. I don't think I ever played.
We've never played a European gig together.
No.
But seen each other at different places,
Yeah.
Trezor for sure.
Yeah. Movement all over. I see. Overseas too.
Yeah, for sure.
Pretty much. Let's go back, man. Because I don't know your full history from the earliest of times, and since you were a baby this big, no, but. Back in the 80s when you were first getting into DJing, what was your background in music? Was it like freestyle, hip hop, electro, or you just came in through house?
It's really pretty. I mean, as far as like what we were influenced by, it would be disco, rock. But then once hip hop and house took off, it seemed like they were kind of on their own tracks with New York and hip hop really. Taking hold, and then house with the radio station support back in the 80s then, like I'm talking like 84. It's like a very hot year for Chicago, hot year for, artists and DJs to be, because there was a lot coming at us, through dances like we had in high school or the radio. And the radio was just two stations, Friday, Saturday night, just drilling it until 4 or 5 in the morning, every 30 minutes.
I mean, it was amazing, the radio, what radio did for music back in the 80s. And then it just changed and it went corporate,
It's the format, right? Something that was hot. They couldn't even really curate what they wanted, but there was so many styles and, disco, jack tracks and, Detroit stuff that all in the mix, and we really didn't have all the little boxes. We put stuff in genre wise. There was a lot of heavy influences there, even with industrial and new wave stuff.
Yeah, did they play industrial music on the radio out here also?
Not really. Maybe join in the chat. Maybe one token. Some New Order stuff here and there.
Probably some college radio did it, but not the mainstream, not the mega mixes that would be.
But like. The college stations had such a small radius, It's almost like having a pirate radio.
Yeah, it'd be like
it only has a broadcast, or less, maybe, and depending on the weather, you can hear some of them. So unless you lived in the city proper, you're probably not hearing a lot of those shows,
Were you able to hear house music in the daytime on the radio out here, or was it just on the mix shows at night on the weekends, maybe coming live from a club or something, or just live mixing at night? I guess it was people like Bad Boy Bill were like really big radio DJs out here, right?
Yeah, I think, they BMX and GCI first, and then, part of the crews that spilled over to B96, like Bill and Julian and, some of the other guys that came over there from BMX, and GCI. So I can't give you the exact lineage breakdown and who, there's between the two stations and stuff. But yeah, like to answer your question, like I remember like the Friday and Saturday nights, but you would catch, unless it was a really like crossover tune with a lot of potential, you probably weren't going to hear it. I don't remember it as much. Some others might be able to recollect it, but it was an interesting time, man. Like they started like some of the hot lunch mixes and stuff later in the game, but yeah, it was a cool time for music. as far as what we considered underground stuff. Even though it was on the radio, like the music was more underground music. It wasn't going to have, appeal on mass Chicago broadcasts.
What would you say would be your most influential record on you from back in the day? I'll give you two: House one, Acid House one.
Oh boy, influential house tune.
Influential, the one that just hyped you up the most, the one, if I had to go to like New York City Electro for me, right, I'd say Set It Off Strophe, right? If I had to say house, I'd probably say Royal House Can You Party, because that was just monumental when it dropped in New York.
Yeah. Oh, and those are big tunes here too. Can You Feel It? And
We'll narrow it down. We'll give you just the Chicago ones.
yeah, the Chicago ones. I don't know. I've said this before in a recent interview. Like some of like Farley's early, Funkin' with the Drums on tracks. Like those were big tunes, man. That was a big one. Funkin' with the Drums. Acid track. I mean,
I go with Spanky Acid Tracks Volume 2. It's my favorite one.
I think before all, even some of that stuff. I mean, really, probably No Way Back would be the big one.
Yeah, that also.
I mean, it's hard to deny.
No Way Back is.
There's so many dope Chicago tracks and acid tracks. Like
so
Armando's.
When did
sick?
When did you first go? When did you first start going out to clubs and stuff? And what were your first club experiences here in Chicago? And the DJs that were at those clubs? And your favorite DJs?
Right. So like 90 was June of 90. I turned 21. So, we had some fake IDs action going on to get in some clubs.
You didn't have the 18 and over, 21 to drink. You had those clubs that they give you the band. You were 21, you could drink, and 18, you could just get in.
Yeah, that was Medusa's. And Alcatraz and stuff. But I was like right on the cusp of being 21. So like to go backwards, but like Rush played, John Curley, Psycho Bitch, they were Terry Bristol, they were playing, at Alcatraz. That was a juice bar, 18 and up. So but actually it was like teen, it was like under 18. And then at a certain time at in Medusa's, they would, I can't remember if they turned the lights on and start, or if they had bands for under 18. Everyone under 18 had to leave. Then it was just 18 and up, and whoever was over 18, it was pretty funny. But yeah, the music was dope there. That was probably like one of the main ones. Yeah, Medusa's. And then anything we had in high school, like little gym jams and stuff from my crew. They had turntables and stuff. We played all the house stuff, all the jack tracks.
And when did you buy your first equipment to start making music? When did you get interested in that?
Probably didn't have my own until about 86.
That's pretty early, man.
I think I had my first 12s.
Yeah, first 12s. And what about making music?
Making music. So I've said the story before, but I had like a pair of friends that were all into music. Most of them they're all older. One of them went to Full Sail right out after high school. He's class 86. Went down there, got his engineering degree, came back. It was engineer of the original Star Trek, so Forrest, Orland, and then it moved to Crestwood. But when I met him, like some of the guys that had, one of our homies had 12s, and they bought a 606, and then the other guys started working on working on a track, and they bought an Ensoniq EPS, the first original one, keyboard.
It's pretty big, if I'm right.
Yeah. So I wanted him to show me how to use it, and he's like, no one taught me shit. I had to go to school, engineering school. You read the manual. I'm like, all right, fuck it. I'm gonna read the manual. So I took the Ensoniq, took it home, and started figuring it out. Because right soon after that, I met the guys that, I was working on stuff then, but I also met guys that my friend Ron was an engineer for. He was engineering these sessions with MCs and guys that were making beats, So they had the ASR 16 keyboard. I think it was in Sonic ASR 16. Then there was the 16 plus rack mounts, but they had the keyboard, and that they were. So this was, for example, there was an MC and two basically producers, and I joined those three, and then it was, for example, there was another guy in the mix that was another MC, but he kind of faded out, and it was just kind of us four, and we were doing like hip hop stuff, but kind of like just a raw edge, a lot of samples, obviously, hence the name, for example. And just like hip house, when hip house was kind of hot, and our own little spin on it. So that was really like in tandem working on my own stuff. I did this record, I think it was like 90, 91. It was on Z-Tech. It was Hypercussion. It was called Just a Little Bass. And they had a bunch of breakbeat samples and stuff, and just like, like some program kind of like fills and stuff. It's pretty cool. It's mostly breakbeat and just kind of like an acidic. We didn't have a 303 back then, so we figured out how to do it, MIDI and stuff. That was early MIDI shit we were using back then, man.
I got to check that out because
So
there's not a lot of breakbeats in Chicago music.
Yeah, no, I know. And it just kind of, like my influences that, growing up were like hip hop and, like early jack tracks, but we were kind of like fascinated by it all, just everything, you could tell early on, there's just like anything goes, throwing it into a mix, see if it works. And, that's why you probably saw like a lot of genres like Italo and, high energy stuff and Chicago jack tracks and disco and stuff. I can see where, like what the influences and what people were feeling, it was a cool era. It's definitely something that I'm grateful for experiencing, at such a young age, going into high school as a freshman. And you have all this music in Beat Street and, hip hop and that whole culture, and just kind of getting hit from all angles. Like you're just like a sponge. Like you couldn't get enough, Some of the house parties we come to in the city and stuff. Mike talked about one of them, Bismarck for Little Lewis. He did it live. That was like right when it got picked up by Elektra or Arista, when it went major label, or RCA, whoever took it back then, and they were doing it live, sax player and stuff. It was dope. It's pretty dope. So
yeah, 89, 90 were amazing years for music, whether it was coming out of the rap and the Public Enemy, Welcome to the Terror Dome, or, Little Lewis Blackout on the radio in New York. The first time I heard that, I had goosebumps. I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
I went out because I already knew French Kiss, and I went out, and it was before I was even buying records. I bought the Little Lewis album on cassette, masterpiece album at that time. It was like nothing like it.
Yeah, like when that track, I mean, that was like instantly the biggest jam on the street. Like we were lining up to get it at Imports, that was one of the original spots I would go to, gramophone, hot jams, obviously hip house where I worked later on in like 94. So yeah, I would say I definitely, now that I think about it, French Kiss was probably the one that really just, it was later than a lot of some of the other stuff, but that definitely had a big impact.
Yeah, that was actually huge. In New York, it was really big in the clubs because I was already working in clubs as like a busboy, so I was hearing it out. I was like 18, and I was like in the clubs like this. This was just huge, endemic.
Yeah, that was, that was a very significant song.
And then,
track,
then enter the 90s. Then enter the 90s, and we're getting into like techno time, right? It's like techno starts coming in, and it's was it hidden here in the beginning of '90 when it was in New York? Like we were having LFO and Sweet Exorcist, Testone, all the British like early Warp records, and the B-sides from Frank DeWolf, all the Belgian shit was hitting.
Yeah,
Were you getting into that?
We definitely heard some, the B-side stuff a little bit. You're kind of starting to cross over some of the industrial new wave kind of vibe.
Yeah.
And some of that was popular in some places, in the city. They were playing that stuff, some parties, definitely on, like some of the daytime parties that from the south side, like near where Hot Jams was, like Archer and Pulaski. There were a lot of parties around there, a lot of the DJs, they were like kind of new wave, industrial, new wave.
Did you get into any of that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a lot of good, like New Order and some of the, from 242 and it's around.
Did you go to see the concerts or anything? You ever go to any of the concerts for these
I saw
bands?
Nitzarab and Depeche Mode, like the World of My Eyes. What was the tour? What was the album? It's like 90.
Wow,
The World.
that's cool.
Yeah, that's pretty early.
I was sleeping on that stuff back then. So
Violator tour. It was a Violator
came
tour.
much later into that.
Nitzarab. Yeah, we were in lawn seats, man. And like, wow.
So
Concert.
then the rave stuff hit, the T99 and the Dominator, and I know that stuff was quite big.
Yeah,
out there,
that
'cause I had the
stormed
shop
in,
as
and
well.
then it like kind of like the music and how like that was like right after BMX and GCI's kind of fizzled out, and the mix show went over to B96, and then some of the DJs then that were playing, they all transitioned to more of the rave stuff. But the raves were going on, and the rave mixtapes, like the streets were kind of like driving the sound for the city. Like that when B96 and GCI, it was kind of like sort of an end of one, not an end, but like an end of a story for what the radio was doing. Then it went, rave started, clubs were already popping a little bit, but when the format of kind of what was going on underground warehouse parties and raves and stuff, that some of that they were just saying like we can't sustain these busts. Like this format's going to have to give a little bit and start seeing it loosen up in the clubs. The clubs here have always been predominantly house. But you're starting to see like I started playing at Shelter on Friday night. They had a material night that Josh Warner and Josh Tong, Eric Guerin, and them were all part of Material Friday at Shelter, and that was like Derek Disjavon, Spencer Kinsey, Josh.
What year was this in?
That's probably starting around 95, 6,
So
somewhere
it's
in there.
coming a bit later, yeah.
Yeah.
I was I came out here and played the first rave in '92, the first techno rave that would be groovier, with Woody McBride and Derek Carter. And,
Yeah, see, I got to look at the flyer. I can't remember everybody that played. The only one that I remember that played, and I can't think of his name, he's from either Pilsen or Little Village. And I can't remember his DJ name, but I remember he was playing Apotheosis over fire, that 042.
I can even remember the promoter's name was George. And he was I think he was from Cicero, because I went out and stayed at his house when I came for the gig. We drove like an hour out, and he had a 303. And it was the first time I ever saw one, and was playing with it in his house because he went out to go run some errands.
You sure that was Groovier? I thought the Groovier
Yeah, that was Groovier. Yeah, it was the 90. No. The Groovier was in the city, but the promoter lived in Cicero.
All right, yeah. Right.
And he had a 303, so it was the first time I ever actually played with one. And I went back to New York, and I called phone stores up and found one for $50 in a shop in the basement in a box. The guy's like, I think I got one in the basement.
That would be a fun podcast. I don't want to go off track, but yeah, Groovier. And I know there was more than one. There was at least two, but that was the first one. If it was blue and it had a white Groovier, like the Goodyear symbol,
yep,
that was arguably one of the first raves.
Yes,
in Chicago.
That's it. I played this. It was in May of 1992.
Yeah, because there was one called Orbit that Andre did from Hot Jams. That was I can't remember where in the city. That was early too.
But I have
that had like some of the LA guys like Kool-Aid and them on it.
Yeah.
I don't think Doc Martin was on it, but
But they had to be doing big warehouse parties for house music out here before then, though.
Yeah, like a lot of underground parties,
like,
just warehouse parties, lost some of the South Loop clubs,
But it was more house focused, not
it was house
focused.
focused.
But what about in this era? Because in '91 it was like when Mentasm came out and Dominator and Anastasia. Where were those records being played? Because by the time I came, those records were done.
Digital Boy played live at one of the clubs here that's gone now. It's called Boom. But you know, I think he just had like an NPC up there, and he was standing up there. There was maybe an MC,
So
hype man up there,
and who else would play on a night like that? That's crazy. I didn't know the Digital Boy.
I don't even remember who DJ'd. You know, a lot of times it's like kind of resident DJs, but you know, you had other clubs going on. You know, you had a couple of the, you know, 18 and under clubs like Medusa's that we talked about, Alcatraz. I don't know what the age was there, but it was 18 for there for sure, I think. And then a lot of clubs that have come and gone, like there was Karma, there was, you know, Excalibur, which is something else now. You had Crowbar,
Yeah, I
you
remember
had
Crowbar.
Generator, you had Red No 5. Like a lot of these, you know, important institutions that were foundational for like Chicago clubbing, you know, especially house and stuff. So, he had some stuff on the West Loop, but yeah, man, that they weren't, you know, like Medusa's probably had the broadest range of stuff that I was part of, that I've seen, that I've been to. I can't speak for like Music Box, what Ron Hardy and them were doing there, because we were right on the cusp of being just too young, you know, like high schoolers and stuff. Shit, we didn't have a car then either, so it would have been tough to get to the city to do that. But yeah,
Yeah, and then the scene starts to expand through the Midwest, and you get connected with Woody McBride and
so
Apples.
kind of going back, yeah, like the rave scene is like full force. You know, there's like some serious personalities in the room, music wise. You know, you had Gabber, you had acid and like hard acid. Then you had like kind of hard trancey stuff that was going on, and you know, Goa and drum and bass. You know, jungle stuff going on, in you know, and house, and it's all mixed in, and you have all, you know, just like you've seen the lineups. You'd have one a little bit.
It get a little weird sometimes.
Kind of
Play after
31
drum and
players,
bass DJ or something.
Yeah, like
I'd be like, what? And then the next DJ's playing like Goa trance. You're like, how do I fit in this?
And I was still playing hard, you know, like some of these early parties outdoor, like cool venues. I remember playing with this one Detroit guy. I knew he was going to be playing house and stuff, but I was just playing just like hard stuff. And he just looked super aggravated at me. And I don't know, I think Derek Carter played that night too, but I can't remember who the DJ was, but I felt bad for him. Like he had to endure like just a rebellious
But I think
time for us playing that stuff, you know?
I think people like Woody and Kurt from Drop Bass and what we were doing in Brooklyn, we were not doing what those other raves were doing. We were really focused on techno at the parties, and I guess the same for Horton in Detroit.
Yeah,
when he was doing the
techno and
raves,
acid were like
we were
kind of hand in hand, right?
So what was your connection in the beginning? You played for Drop Bass first, or for Woody first in Minneapolis?
I definitely met Kurt from Drop Bass first. I don't know if I met him here. You know, I'm sure we've been to parties before where we didn't know each other, but I'm pretty sure I met him here. And then you know, start playing for their shows, and then the releases started coming. You know, I think four was like Midwest hardcores, and then mine was 17. I don't know. There's a few there's a couple compilations, and then there's one or two solos that I've done on there.
Yeah, and the first time we played together was at Drop Bass at the Ascension party. I got you on the vocals introducing us.
Yeah, I mean,
still that mixes online still.
Yeah,
too,
the aesthetics of it, and like me, like unveiling the pentagram. Coming in and all the red lighting.
Jimmy Crash was really freaked out. You know, he became a born again Christian and became a minister like maybe a year later. Maybe that gig freaked him out or something. I don't know, man. Not that there was any like, you know, sacrifices or anything. But maybe there were. I don't know about that. I wasn't involved in it if there were.
Yeah, no. I mean, you know, tongue in cheek, right? Take it so serious, everyone. But you know, it created a funny mystique and just a lot of propaganda.
Yeah, it was great, man. It fit the music.
It definitely created a mood.
I mean, we were
vibe.
playing like 160 BPM acid tracks at this time.
Yeah,
That was that fast new energy that was going on, right? You know?
Yeah, that was just, that was, we had to get through that, just to kind of refine, what everybody's going to play
I mean,
more long term and like kind of alter egos,
you went the first even further, right? With Aphex Twin. That was amazing when he was sitting in the chair in the mud. And David Prince from React was like dancing, naked on acid or something on the speaker stacks.
He was definitely up on the EV stack.
That was an insane party. But by the time I went to go on in the other 10, the cops came and like, turn the fucking music off. I was like, yo.
I remember some of the commentary from like the promoters and the police. Just create funny stuff, kind of more like inside stuff that you'd have to be there. But yeah, they were just complaining about how they were kind of being dicks. But he's like, you can make out hi-hat patterns across the freeway over in the valley over there. It was pretty funny. But yeah, I don't know if that was the first or second one, right?
No, that was the first one. That was the first one.
Okay,
yeah,
so that was the second one. So yeah, that was like Hoshi.
Yeah, that was Mike Dredd. Yeah, Thomas Heckman.
And
my brother, me.
What did Hoshi's? They were all in, I don't know who drove Rhea in the van back.
I drove with Aphex Twin there.
So what did Hoshi say? People who have depression problems shouldn't listen to this music. Hoshi said something.
I don't even remember that. You got a really good memory on that one.
No, Woody or Tommy Sunshine was telling me the backstory of like the drive was kind of tense until Hoshi made a comment about that, and then that was just.
I just remember Aphex Twin playing for the first time I heard it. It was Aphex Twin. It was Analog Bubble Bath. What is it? Number 4 with the elephant chant. The woo, woo. He was playing it with the tribal drums. He's feeling the chant. Everybody's like knee deep in the mud. It was just insane.
I remember him playing Public Energy 303, I think. And for sure, the Gherkin Jerks he played. And I was like, wow, okay. That was pretty dope. People are kind of bugging out, That was a tense moment in there, in a good way.
And then
people were losing their shit.
And then Kurt had the crazy parties, and then Woody had those crazy parties with those wall of sounds, man. I remember playing one that had this massive wall of sound. It was really
Woody had like Disco Family Plan, and then he started the Wall of Sound. And a lot of that there was a lot of collaboration, like Woody and Kurt, so, with Further and stuff, but like a lot of the parties, I lost touch with some of them when I got to Cali because I went out there to open a record shop in 97. So they were still going strong in here, but, like what was in the Midwest, what Kurt and Drop Bass was doing with Minneapolis, like that. I mean, that was a lot of artists and DJs that were kind of permeating the Midwest, like upper Midwest, Minnesota, even up to Duluth, even, and everywhere.
Yeah, in the Dakotas. My brother was even playing in the Dakotas with Woody. I've never been out there.
Yeah,
in South Dakota.
But like early on, Wisconsin, Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, and I know later on Kansas had stuff too. But Indy, obviously. Detroit, Michigan, but all, the whole Midwest and stuff was really just like, especially in this neck of the woods where the Drop Bass shows are going on. We'd be playing in towns, I don't want to say farm towns, but pretty remote towns where there's no satellite radio. You might have a MTV shit, but you didn't have any radio. Probably no college. I'd be curious to know what they were playing on, like in a city like Madison, where it's the University of Wisconsin. It's a pretty cool college town. Like, I wonder what was going on there.
I think I think college radio was kind of big for the scene in general in the early '90s.
There was someone down in Gainesville early on, like that was kind of like charting and playing and giving feedback on the promos. Like. A lot more stringent than they do now on how you get promos, if you can even get to have.
I mean, it also revolved around the record shops and the flyers and the mixtapes culture, and it's
Yeah.
really all helped propel the scene a lot.
Between the parties that we were part of early on in the 90s and mixtapes, that was the, you know, the street evangelism, so to say,
Yeah.
you know, to where you could spread the word of the music and the tapes and the tracks and stuff, you know. You're part of that whole lineage too, you know, with what was going on in New York, with the parties in the store that you guys had. So yeah, like doing the early drop bass stuff and then doing stuff for Woody. For Woody he probably had close to 10 labels with vinyl.
I was crazy. It used to
Fired
drive me
up.
nuts. I'd get with stacks of promos. I wanted to kill him. I'm like, man, I got about another 100 records from Europe I got to listen to. I can't listen to all of this. I'm like, you know what? I'm actually going back to some of those records now and realizing, wow, those records, some of those were really good.
I know.
But I had to listen to them so quick because it was so much and it was oversaturating the buying for me every week, you know?
Centrific was recording a bunch of dats. I remember I was trying to sleep in one of the
Wait, what's that?
rooms, and Centrific kept coming back and playing the dats. He was ripping them into the computer. Like he was just playing them, and obviously in real time, you know, and just recording them into the computer. So he's ripping all the dats, you know. That's the only thing you can do is in real time. You can't render them, and
Yeah,
you
I know.
you can't speed it up. So he was just playing them. He kept coming back, playing however long the dat was. What were they, 120 minutes, 2 hours? Play, stop, load another dat, record. He's got all of them. He'd be
Crazy.
one to really.
Woody was a machine back in the day with that, and I have to admit, and just the amount of records he was putting out at the time too.
Yeah, there was a lot going on.
But
holy crap, man!
yeah, you moved over to the West Coast in '97. Why did you leave the scene when the scene was so strong here? I know you mentioned opening this record store, but
We talked about like where I was playing and stuff. Like definitely in the Midwest, New York, Philly. I was playing in LA. Playing some big parties.
Oh, you're playing some big parties in '97. I don't remember the scene being that big there. I mean, I would go out there occasionally. We got a little bit bigger after.
You know,
'99.
I'd get, brought out there to play like some of the hardcore parties, you know, and then there was the big ones, and then Phoenix. We were playing in Phoenix, but I went out there. I met my partners in a record shop in Huntington Beach that opened in '97. I met them playing one of the big B3 candy raves called Junior Beats. It was up in the hills. It was like, DJ Dan, DJ Trance, me, I think Sneak played. And I met my future partners, or one of the brothers that I met. There was two brothers that were the main investors, and they said, hey, we want to open the store. I said, man, I've been interested to come out and, do some of the buying, just reload the family. And we moved from Chicago in '97 and headed out there to Huntington and opened the record shop up. So they were trying to bring in like high-end clothing boutique kind of stuff, went out to Vegas for Magic, figure that all out. But anyway, that's what brought me out there, is to run Higher Source with some other, investors and another crew. Yeah. So that's what happened.
But the scene was kind of like much like more down than compared to here or into New York at that time, in the East, not necessarily New York, but the East Coast. Did you find that it affected your career as far as playing, the amount of gigs you were playing before?
Yeah, it kind of created a pseudo like conflict of interest, because I still had bookings going on in Europe. So that was kind of created some turbulence, between running the store and then trying to go overseas still. So that kind of, and raising a family with a young child, my daughter was 4 then. So trying to manage that and not have the house and cars fall apart, and trying to, just afford living out there, like rent almost triple from Chicago to go to Orange County.
You lived there for how many years? Like 15 years?
16.
16.
Yeah. So I was there 97 through 2013. And right when I got there, I kind of started 4-track. So I'm still like kept it going all this time. So we're, like 30 something releases now. So I stopped doing contact right before I left Chicago and started like incorporated it in '97, and when we got there, try to get it running and stuff. So that's what was going on back then. And yeah, like contact had stopped. I wasn't doing stuff for really drop bass. Um, Maybe a couple things for like compilations for Woody, but then Woody kind of folded it. Like once vinyl took a turn for the worse, and they were pushing digital format and CDs, and then CDs kind of
And then it was
blew up.
minimal and tech house were at this point, so
And
that
then,
was
yeah,
also a little bit
so
of it, right.
that. Well, we've seen all these genres like come and go, and kind of the referencing is like they're kind of reinventing themselves over time. So it's been interesting, like getting to California and trying to contribute to the scene and the growth and the spreading the word of you know the music that we were into. Like they had a lot of complimentary stuff, but I think like just the raw, like straight ahead techno, like I think did a good job of helping push that there. There was other guys doing it. There was shit.
I mean, also when you went in '97, there was like no really illegal downtown rave warehouse scene. They were really cracking down on the parties in the mid to late '90s. It's not like now where there's parties all over downtown and they let all of it happen pretty much. Really don't have that many busts there.
Yeah.
Back in the mid '90s, it was really like there was next to no warehouse parties because I used to go out there and it was always playing at like Fox Theater or Pomona, different promoters every other week. I'd be out there, and it was never in any of these never like it is now. There, like the scene is quite amazing actually there now. In the last, since I would say Droid Behavior, since Mo and them were doing the parties, 15 years ago.
Yeah, I mean I mean it just seemed like the more legal they could make it, better odds. Along with that comes like shorter windows that you don't have as many hours to work with. So you're kind of having maybe less DJs or only one room. The clubs, like here, the club, everything kind of moved illegally, and I just knew it was going to go to the clubs. I said, if just follow what's going on in Europe, like a lot of the outlaw stuff, they were moving to the clubs quick.
I mean,
that was almost automatic.
A lot of this had to do with the Rave Act law from Biden. It's really cracked down on the parties in 2003 when they passed that law, and everybody got afraid to do warehouse parties because if somebody got caught selling drugs in the party, the promoter was getting locked up for it. It would immediately go to the person that organized the event.
Yeah,
that was part of the whole Rave Act law thing, and took years for that to calm down a bit. I mean, it's probably still a law, but nobody's enforcing it at this point.
Yeah,
but
you don't hear much about.
But you had that guy Disco Donnie in New Orleans, and they put him in jail for he was doing. You ever play for him down there? He was doing a lot of parties.
And
he went to jail because they caught people dealing drugs in the party, and people got really scared after that. People were like, all right, it's going in the clubs.
As long as the format of the music holds, then the clubs can survive, as long as the people go. So hopefully the music remains the focal point, and everything else kind of follows, but, there's just a lot of big mega clubs, they're charging a lot for drinks and stuff, and they're kind of relying on that. So I don't know.
I think that the raves were big also, there were people really liked the mission, to go on the mission to somewhere to go to. Remember, they would do the map points, and you go to a map point, and then somebody would tell you where the party is, and it was, every weekend you were in a different place in a different location, or maybe they would use the same location a few times. But it was always kind of there was always a new mission every few months instead of going to the same place all the time over and over, and it made it more exciting.
Yeah, I mean, we were DJing, so we didn't go through all the shenanigans a lot of others had to do to figure out where the party.
Yeah, that's true. Right, we'd
get the beat on where we're going to go directly, so we didn't get to experience a lot of that.
But I did. I would go to all the parties, so I would.
Yeah,
I mean, of course, you get the inside information from the promoters, but I did it also.
I remember. I don't have a lot of memories of map points, but I have a lot of stories of you go to this map point and they send you to another map point, and they have people. So they're all trying to really keep the fuzz off their back, and keeping for those who know, only know. Man, those in the hotlines, the party hotlines for the map point instructions, man, those are good times.
I mean, Chicago
Lucky
actually
to
was
seen that.
Chicago had a lot of problems with the police even before the rave backlash. They were really cracking down on the parties here, even in the late '90s. It was a scene we used to be really strong.
Mayor Daley.
Yeah, he had a bit of a hard on for the busting the parties. If I remember correctly. Yeah, because we weren't having that problem until later.
That there was extra emphasis and focus, CPD, to really crack on it.
Chicago's always been a bit strange with the scene because here's the birthplace of house. You would expect the scene to be bigger even now with
I have bigger expectations still.
Yeah,
how it's embraced here.
Why do you think it is like that? Why do you think there's not more people here into it, like in the way it is in Chicago? I mean, not in Chicago, but in New York and LA, where the scenes are a lot bigger. And they'd be in New York, there could be 5-6 parties.
A large part of the audience, when the radio stations kind of veered from it, I think they lost how to really connect with the people. So you have more commercial EDM stuff going on a big scale, and that seems to be the accessibility of it is pretty in your face.
It seems strange that the house music coming from really here and how big it was that that there would just be more people just through tradition, through families telling their children house music's from the pride of it. Like
I'm seeing more of a city support, like visible city support on like some of the cultural stuff they're doing, and like doing some of the panels at the university and stuff. I sat on one with Terry Hunter for one of the Chicago house music festivals, but they did it at UFC in Hyde Park, and you're just seeing more of the city like involvement. Like I've gone to the Chosen Few picnic. That's Terry Hunter and Hatchet Brothers and Alan King and Mike Dunn and a couple others, and there's definitely like an embrace in that the community, the Black community is like heavily embraced it, but then you have the club kids and those that know it through that, but Chicago, it's been a pretty segregated city, and I think when the radio when the radio shows really don't support it, XM radios doing their token shows that are very nichey. You don't have, and other than like some of the independent college radio stations in the clubs, that retain a certain format of music, how are the people going to know what's what, especially a young generation now in their teens and 20, like they're seeing stuff they see on, social media, that's kind of their peer into something other than their day to day. Think of what
it's harder to show people or turn people onto stuff now. It's just too much information out there.
They're very, very spoiled, like we had to do a lot of work to go we were given some of this early stuff on the Chicago House, like on the radio here, but we had to work to make it unique and make find our style and flavor and have this appeal and stay underground. That was always the appeal, was to try to keep it underground, because it's about the feeling of retaining its kind of identity, and it kind of gets hoed out, if it gets too big and, the wrong, in the wrong hands and with the wrong agenda, and just kind of use it at our disposal. And it's like, we've always fought to kind of retain its identity,
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some people doing underground parties here again. You know,
Yeah.
I definitely played here a bit more in the last years. There was a drive on. I didn't even come here for like 10 years. There was really not much going on, you know. You know, from like 2004 to like 2015 or something, I hadn't played here at all. I was like one of the longest droughts I've had in any of the major cities in the US to play somewhere. I'm surprised that they're not really doing anything like, well, not necessarily surprised, but you think maybe there would be something like movement here in Chicago for the
Yeah.
Chicago artists, you know,
Yeah.
like,
So, I mean, I think that was a long time coming. You have Ark, who's doing that's Oris, and they've done it 4 years now. I played the festival now, so they
okay,
have
so
a
how many
festival.
people come to that? I don't even know about that.
I don't even know what the numbers were. I'd be curious to see what it was, but I mean, they had 4 stages. You know, you have like similar to Movement. You know, similar lineups to Movement, a similar Chicago Detroit story. You know,
Oh,
Detroit's
this is
part of
interesting.
that.
I didn't even know. I
Yeah,
wasn't
so
aware.
that was over Labor Day weekend. 4 big stages. You know, you have bigger artists. You know, like in a kind of a different realm of what we play at, but you know, there's a lot of the techno artists that are playing like more festival style. You know, bigger thing. You know,
Is there any homage to any of the original Chicago artists like there was in Detroit?
yeah, yeah.
You know,
So I mean, you had um, Terry Hunter and Marshall Jefferson played. You know, Derek Carter, Mark Farina played. Um, Lady D, Heather. But you know, when I saw some of the chosen few guys, one of them for sure, Terry Hunter played this year. So Marshall Jefferson, as I mentioned. So they had, you know, everybody kind of split up on different stages. I played back to back with Hiroko. So you're seeing, you know, some house upheld, like in like they should expect to see it like represented here. So I think you're going to see more of that. I think as they figure out how to like package this. I think it's a massive opportunity for Chicago to do it. You have to in a major metropolis like this. You know what I mean?
yeah, no, it's
You
needed.
know, it's just like hip hop supported in New York. You know, that's that's to me where it all started. You know,
What about Ghetto House? Is that still a big thing out here?
it's really kind of just transformed. It's a little quicker in the footwork. You know, juke stuff. So like some of the same spirit of it, but it's a lot faster, man. And it's not you know, it's not at a tempo that you and I play at. Like it's pretty up there, you know.
And what about people making house techno out here? Newer artists coming up in the scene. Is there any names that you know of that are coming up that are young and
Yeah.
much?
So one of them's there's guys that have been DJing and making tracks, but like user friendly is Marco Flores and Roberto Herrera or Rob Threezy. They're together. They're user friendly and they're making a little bit faster stuff. And they're on 4 track. So those guys are definitely one to watch from Chicago. Kobe Dupre is another 4 track artist. I know it might sound a little biased and partial because it's my label, but Kobe Dupre, these younger guys, you know,
That's fine.
they're doing
That's
stuff.
your job. Your job
Yeah,
is to push the younger people. That's
yeah,
what our
there's
jobs are.
definitely.
Help the newer
But
artists
there's
out
so
there.
many more. I don't want to like seem
Yeah, yeah, no, but
too
there's a
quantified.
lot. But there are people that
Um,
are you.
yeah, there's a younger generation here that is definitely fired up and
Are they keeping
flying the flag and just playing legit stuff for sure.
they got that Chicago Jack in there because that's kind of missing sometimes, and I find in the techno these days the
Yeah,
hands and the hats. You
yeah,
know,
for
love
sure.
that.
You
You
feel
know,
that, yeah,
get the claps of the
yeah,
page. You know,
yeah. There's definitely you can feel that. You can tell a lot of times when there's a Chicago DJ come on. There's always one or two token of the in that spirit that'll come up, you know, in a techno set.
we're in your studio here. What we got going on? We got some new jams coming out. What's up? You got the label
Yeah,
still doing contact?
yeah. And I'm doing 4 track. So
Okay.
I partnered up with Jason Patrick. We're doing this pseudonym called Aliasing. So we did the first release, 4 tracks, back in trying to think of probably like November of last year. And then working on some solo stuff, some remixes right now. I'm working on one for Lindsay Herbert and Jason Dole for Evil Groove. So I'm working on something for an artist called PS11, and working on a remix for Echo Wolf in Germany. So I'm working on that for him, and I need to finish that like tomorrow.
I also see that you're playing quite a bit. Also in the States still. The scene has got a nice resurgence going on. I've been playing quite a lot.
Yeah,
I've been same for you.
Yeah, I've just like a lot, playing around, kind of doing the U.S. circuit a bit, between like Seattle and San Fran, L.A., Phoenix, Chicago, Detroit.
Yeah, the scene is kind of at the best it's been since the '90s. I would say right now it's building back up again.
Yeah, there's it's I'm 100% for it. It's nice to see it succeed here because then we have a base here and not have to focus just on Europe. Got to do what you got.
Yeah, it just was saddened me to see that it collapsed the way it did, in the outs decade, and then even in the beginning of the teen decade, and now it's been slowly coming up. I mean, the biggest cities like of course New York and LA have been good for over 10 years now. Been driving pretty good. But, seeing that Chicago's building back up again over the last few years. And, I mean, Chicago's been going pretty good for the last 7 or 8 years, I think, since like 2015. And, just in the small cities, places that I haven't been to in ages, and it's quite exciting, actually, because I feel like it's more organic and more underground than what's kind of happening in Europe at the moment. In Europe, it's the festivals really dominated the scene there, and what the clubs are booking is based on what the festivals are booking. Where I feel here is a lot of the underground promoters are just booking artists that they like who make music, and it's been
I think that's a good summation of what's going on here. Yeah, for sure, and that which is key. Like you could tell there's some thought put in, in a lot of the underground stuff in the clubs too.
Yeah, it's
really cool.
Anyway, Joe, thank you for coming on.
So, man, I appreciate it. It's very good to see you.
Yeah.
It's been years.
Thank you for letting us do this in the studio here.
Of course. Welcome. Excited to share.
And hopefully you can catch us both playing somewhere one day again together. It's been a minute. It's been a minute. But it'll happen again.
I think it's about time.
It'll happen again. Peace out, everybody.
Peace.
Sonic Room Podcast.